Well, President Trump delivered the first State of the Union address in his second term last night. He highlighted his economic agenda, delivered some partisan jabs, and included plenty of made-for-TV moments.
Around 1 hour and 48 minutes. It's the longest State of the Union in more than 60 years. CBN's chief senior political analyst David Brody has the story.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
In this midterm election year, President Trump knows the state of the economy will determine control of Congress and his agenda. So it was no surprise that he began by touting his economic record.
A short time ago, we were a dead country. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, the hottest. The cost of chicken, butter, fruit, hotels, automobiles, rent is lower today than when I took office by a lot.
While the jury is still out on how Americans feel about their wallet, Trump poured on the optimism.
Our country is winning again. In fact, we're winning so much that we really don't know what to do about it.
The president also announced economic news of a different kind, a crackdown on fraud.
There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance.
As for memorable moments, there were plenty. The USA's gold medal men's hockey team was in the chamber and received a patriotic standing ovation, although things turned uglier when the president brought up immigration.
The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Republicans applauded for a couple of minutes, while Democrats remained seated and heckled Trump.
You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's very simple. All voters must show voter ID. All voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote.
When Trump called for a ban on sex transitioning operations for minors, liberal Democrats raised their voices in objection.
These people are crazy, I'm telling you. They're crazy. We're lucky we have a country. With people like this, Democrats are destroying our country, but we've stopped it just in the nick of time.
The president lowered the temperature by invoking the resurgence of faith in America as he acknowledged his guest, Erica Kirk, the wife of slain Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk.
In Charlie's memory, we must all come together to reaffirm that America is one nation under God, and we must totally reject political violence of any kind. We love religion, and we love bringing it back.
One of the evening's highlights came when the president awarded 2 Congressional Medals of Honor. One went to 100-year-old Royce Williams, a World War II Navy hero. Even with moments like that, the Democrats' takeaway was something completely different. Newly elected Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger gave the Democrat response.
He lied, he scapegoated, and he distracted. And he offered no real solutions to our nation's pressing challenges, so many of which he is actively making worse.
Well, David Brody joins us now. So, David, what do you think about the speech? Do you give him any points for staying on message?
Yes, as a matter of fact, especially, Gordon, I thought he would look right at the Supreme Court justices in that front row, as Bob Uecker once said. I think I'm dating myself with the Bob Uecker reference. But those Supreme Court justices literally in the front row, and I thought he would go off prompter and look straight at them and ridicule them somehow, some way. He didn't do that. He was very measured. So I think that was one example. But I think overall he was on the 80% prompter retention rate, if you will. Having said that, there were some moments that we just pointed out there, especially on immigration, and I think that was obviously the big moment in the entire speech, at least from a policy and political standpoint.
Well, he definitely highlighted the divisions between the two parties on immigration, on what to do with people here, also on transgender and that kind of things for minors. Do you think that scored any points?
Yeah, for sure. But for Donald Trump, and for ever since he glided down that escalator, this has always been low-hanging fruit. I mean, this is something that, in essence, was one of the big reasons that he became president in the first place on the immigration issue. The real issue, Gordon, obviously, is the economy, or as James Carville used to say, it's the economy, stupid. And I thought he did a great job to lead with that. Obviously, he had to lead with the economy, but it wasn't just that, Gordon. I mean, he literally went from the economy and then pretty much spent, I would say, 85, 90% of his entire speech on domestic issues rather than foreign policy issues, rather than Monroe Doctrine or Iran or Israel. All important issues. But for Donald Trump, it's all about the PR aspect of it. In other words, you have to sell it to the American public that you're on top of domestic issues. And of course, the White House will say, well, of course he's on top of domestic issues. But people have to feel that he's really working for them and not get bogged down in some of maybe what might be ancillary foreign policy issues when people aren't feeling certain paychecks come in the way they want them to. So I thought he did a very good job of that last night.
Do you think it was enough to change the public's opinion? He's really been taking it on the chin in terms of his rating, and do people think he's doing a good job on the economy? Just is he a good president? Those things are really going to impact the midterm elections. So do you think he changed it enough to make a difference come November?
Well, there was a CNN poll that came out right after the debate. It wasn't one of these online polls. It was the methodology, was pretty good. And 64% of people surveyed after the speech believe that his policies will help them in the future. Before the speech, it was 54%. So it went up 10% after the speech. That's obviously good news for the president and the administration. But look, Gordon, I think ultimately the State of the Union may have been last night, but the real State of the Union will have a much better sense come Q3, quarter three, in July of this year, when that big, beautiful bill and some of the IRS tax returns come in, and we'll see whether or not the economy is starting to turn around. That's the key State of the Union, because that will determine the midterms more than a speech last night.
What did you think of Spangenberger's response? Do you think that scored any points?
Well, look, I mean, let's just let the cat out of the bag, and I think we've done that for a while now. But a spoiler alert: she campaigned as a center-left candidate, and she's governed as a far-left candidate. So, you know, you take a lot of what she had to say with a grain of salt. Now, having said that, what I was looking for in her rebuttal was she going to invoke the name Mikey Sherrill? Mikey Sherrill, the governor of New Jersey, also a center-left, or at least positioning herself as center-left. And she did talk about Mikey Sherrill and herself, two center-left candidates. At least that's what they're going to call themselves. So that said to me that the Democrats are actually going to have a midterm message that is going to try and push that agenda, that center-left agenda, at least on paper. In practice, we've seen in Virginia that hasn't been the case. But I think that's what Democrats are going to try to do. And not only that, Gordon, but in her rebuttal, in Spangenberger's rebuttal, she talked about going into Iowa and making a difference in Georgia and in Texas and places like that. Once again, it was more of a center-left message than a far-left message. Whether or not Democrats can pull off that in the midterms remains to be seen.
Well, you've mentioned the hyper-focus on the economy and on American citizens. I was really surprised there was nothing about foreign policy. So there, you know, nothing about Venezuela and nothing about Ukraine. I guess that's probably not surprising. But the big one is we have this huge armada. It's one of the largest deployments in American history off the coast of Iran. I was expecting something on that. Why nothing?
Well, I think it's the calm before the storm. And I think this is knowing President Trump the way I've known him the last 15 years or so. When he starts to go quiet on an issue, get ready for the roar, the peace through strength. I think we're seeing the peace in the words, and it's buried in the speech. There wasn't much of anything there. But to me, that suggests that he's getting closer to pulling the trigger, if you will, in Iran. I think that's the takeaway that I had.
What's your forecast? You know, I keep, every time I interview, I ask you to look in a crystal ball. So what's your forecast going into November? Is post-November a completely different Congress? Are we going to be looking at a lot of investigations, the potential for Trump to get impeached again, or are the Republicans going to hold to a narrow majority?
Well, if Democrats get in charge, there's no doubt they're going to try and impeach President Trump. And I'll be honest with you, Gordon, I'm not trying to get out of the question. I know I should have a stand. I don't want to be Switzerland here, Gordon. But the truth of the matter is it's late February. We just don't know. There are so many variables between now and November. Having said that, I think at this point, if I were someone who had to kind of tell you what I think at this point, which is, by the way, what you're asking, I believe, I believe that the Republicans will continue to take control of the Senate. I think the House is much dicier. I would think that the Democrats would probably take the House based on historical precedent, if you will, and also some of the terrain that's out there. But there's so many wild cards, and I've got to tell you, if we can have a conversation in July and see how those numbers are economically, I think I'll have a better sense of it then.
All right, I can guarantee we'll have a conversation in July. This is an election year, and you're our analyst, so thanks for the insight, and we look forward to more. David, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Gordon.
Well, in Vermont, a centuries-old tradition in local politics is engaging the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Citizens in several communities will vote on whether to adopt a pledge against apartheid that's aimed at Israel. With anti-Semitism already on the rise, it could only deepen divisions. Tara Mergener reports from Brattleboro, Vermont.
When the notice for the annual meeting is put up at the post office, the townspeople start taking sides.
Town Meeting Day is a cherished civic tradition in the Green Mountain State. Each March, Vermont residents meet face-to-face to vote on local issues, from school budgets to road repairs.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. And this year, some ballots include a question reaching far beyond local government, whether to agree to a pledge aimed at Israel to call themselves an apartheid-free community.
It says, we affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people and all people, and to that end, to join others in working to end all support for Israel and the military occupation of Palestine.
While the symbolic resolution is not legally enforceable, it will reportedly be considered in at least 3 towns, Montpelier, Hartford, and Richmond.
Apartheid-free means apartheid-free from occupation, from colonization, from oppression.
As part of a national campaign, the Quaker-affiliated American Friends Service Committee has been active here for years. Supporters canvass dozens of communities, collecting signatures to secure ballot placement so they can draw attention to what they describe as human rights violations by Israel. That's a claim strongly rejected by the Israeli government.
Anyone who says that Israel is an apartheid state has no clue what is the real definition of apartheid.
The resolution encourages economic pressure against Israel, such as the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement. The resolution also seeks to oppose all forms of racism, including anti-Semitism.
You know the river to the sea means the destruction of Israel, right?
Yeah, I do know that.
What we're doing is criticizing the policies and the actions of the state of Israel, not the Jews.
Mark Trankman of Vermont Friends of Israel doesn't believe the measure should be included on this unique day and feels a deepening of divisions and tight-knit communities.
The things that people usually talk about in Town Meeting Day are whether to replace a culvert in a dirt road or buy a new school bus for our kids, town budgets. The meetings have been hijacked by this anti-Israel mob.
Since the brutal October invasion, anti-Semitic incidents have risen nationwide.
The number of anti-Semitic incidents in the region has never been higher.
The Anti-Defamation League reports more than 600 incidents across New England in 2024, including in Vermont. Vermont law enforcement investigated threatening letters sent to synagogues in 2025, and anti-Semitic graffiti has also been reported in recent years. Authorities see no evidence linking those incidents directly to local pledge campaigns. Still, Jewish resident Denise Gebro, a personal trainer in Proctorsville, says she is afraid.
I've received hate mail, calling me horrible names, things that aren't true. I've had people on my Facebook page for work go through my friend list and contact a bunch of people that are my clients. Every synagogue's been hit with some sort of graffiti.
Last spring, voters in several Vermont towns approved non-binding apartheid-free pledges. Supporters say this marks the first time municipalities in the country have adopted a pledge of this kind through a public vote.
It really showed the success of this campaign and the success of the organizers and activists in Vermont in proving that Palestine is a local issue.
Thetford became the first town to vote on and approve the pledge. Petitioners argued a public vote was a moral issue and that it reflected community values about human rights.
The Thetford Select Board was concerned that if we didn't have it on the ballot, that it would come up in other business, and folks who were unaware of this topic coming up would feel that they had been denied an opportunity to weigh in.
We won very conservative towns and we won liberal towns.
The campaign has spread nationwide and internationally, with broad support from faith communities, businesses, and student groups. Critics are concerned about broader social consequences.
We are heading towards a division of America that we have not seen literally since pre-civil rights era, going all the way back to the Jim Crow era and into the pre-Civil War era. And what they're doing is dividing Jews off from the rest of the population. And the historical precedent for this is not pretty.
Stop funding Israeli apartheid and genocide.
In Burlington, the city council, not petitioners, decides what goes on the ballot. And council members have repeatedly rejected the question, saying it could raise tension and does not belong in local government. Meanwhile, in Brattleboro, where voters approved the pledge last year, this restaurant owner says community divisions have deepened.
The amount of hate that we as a business receive is endless. It's on social media, you get it in person. I have my daughter goes to the school, we have doing the salute and saying Heil Hitler in front of her. We getting people telling me, get the F out of here.
More Democrat voters per capita than any other state in the country. So it seems like a good breeding ground or a test case, a proof of concept for the people that want to take this movement nationwide.
Now, some are wondering whether the town meeting day tradition could play a role in how international issues play out in local communities, and whether similar debates spread far beyond the state. In Brattleboro, Vermont, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
When I first started hearing that Israel was an apartheid state, when that accusation was first leveled, I just laughed at it. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. You do not know the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is Arab Muslims and Arab Christians have full voting rights, full citizenship rights, are elected to the Knesset, serve in the IDF, and have complete freedom within Israel because they're Israeli citizens. Right after October 7th, I had the privilege of going to Israel. I was going to go to the Gaza envelope to see the destruction of the kibbutzes there. And just the irony that they were the ones leading the charge of how Israel could do even more for the people of Gaza, and they were the very ones massacred. As I'm walking the streets of Tel Aviv, I noticed a group of Muslim women. They were wearing their headscarves, and they decided to get some ice cream, and so they went to the ice cream shop, and here they are calmly eating their ice cream on the streets of Tel Aviv, and it occurred to me, nobody's threatening them, nobody's trying to kill them, nobody's trying to rape them, nobody's trying to do anything against them. They live in peace. Now, to say that's an apartheid state, you obviously don't know what's currently going on. Now, when you deal with Gaza, when you deal with the Palestinian-controlled West Bank, when you look at those areas, you see monuments to terror. You see people that are completely dedicated to wiping Israel off the map. They want to kill Israelis, and they do it all the time. If they don't have weapons, they use knives, kitchen knives, to do it. They use cars to ram into bus stops. They are continually doing that. They had plenty of opportunity for their own state, and keep that in mind. Going back to 1948 with the partition from the UN, The Jews said, yes, we will form Israel. And the Palestinians said, we won't form a Palestinian state. We're going to declare war. That has been their stance for decades. And to say that somehow Israel is the oppressor in this equation, no, they're not. They're the victim. They're the victim of Palestinian aggression, Arab aggression, going back for decades. Let's wake up to that. Let's realize this propaganda campaign, it's been incredibly successful, but let's counter it with the truth, with people that really know the history of the modern state of Israel. If you want more information about that, we have plenty of films that go through the founding of Israel, how they were dedicated to buying land, not occupying land. They wanted to build and have the desert bloom. They just took over desert areas and made them incredibly fertile, and they built a nation. On the other side, they were trying to constantly engage in war. They never had any attempt to build a nation. If you want to see it, we have a lot of films like The Hope, In Our Hands, all available on the CBN Family app. I encourage you to get educated, because we all, as Christians, need to be educated on these issues so that we can stand with Israel. Ashley?
When Lizzie Morgan was just 5 years old, she sang to her younger brother huddled in a corner. "I've been through the storm and rain, but I made it." Worship for her was a safe place, and it became her greatest weapon in the fight of her life. Well, Lizzie, I am so excited to chat with you today, girl.
Thank you for having me. For real, I'm excited.
Yeah, girl. All right, well, let's go back. I want to start at the beginning. How did you grow up? Did you grow up in the church?
I am definitely a church kid. I'm a pastor's kid. My grandparents have pastored the same church since as far back as I can remember.
This church
that we're sitting right here.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the stage that I really learned how to sing, how to lead worship in. And there was just something that I was so drawn to about church. And I was really, really drawn to my grandmother and my grandfather and watching them pastor. I wanted to be right next to them all the time. And there was just something about it from the day that I was born. I just wanted to be around this atmosphere.
When did you really start developing your own voice?
It wasn't until I started going through different things, probably 13 years old, when I really started realizing, oh, this is like a tool that we can use to help us get through things and help us get into the presence of the Lord and really use it to navigate life and its struggles. So I would say 13 years old is when I really started trying to find my voice.
Did something happen at that age that kind of led you to that?
When I was 13 years old, my parents came to me and told me that they were going to get a divorce. I didn't even think it was a big deal. I was just like, oh, I'm going to go ask God to heal my parents' marriage, and he's going to do it. And so I began to do that when I was 13 years old, and my parents still got a divorce. And so it was that first time in my life where I really had that moment of just doubting, questioning if I believed, really feeling like God had failed me, if I'm being honest. But it was in that season where I had to really find him for myself. He allowed me to be very real with him. There was something in me that I felt very comfortable talking about my disappointment with him, and maybe even where I thought that he had failed me. And he showed up to be very faithful and very kind and very real. He wasn't my grandparents' God anymore. I felt like he was my God for the first time.
You've been really open and honest about the things that you have struggled with over the years that have just, deepened your relationship with the Lord. Your dad struggled with addiction as well. How did that affect you growing up and you being that person to lead people in worship, but understanding that you're struggling too and you have disappointments and you might be questioning God and Lord, what are you doing?
Me and my dad have a great relationship now, and God has really restored a lot in that, and it's a huge part of my testimony. I remember seeing my dad be one thing on stage and people loving him and celebrating him for it, but then going home and experiencing something different. And so from a very young age, I kind of just was like, I want nothing to do with that. If leading people in worship and having powerful moments on stage means that my family bears the cost of it and the weight of it, then God, please don't make me do that. But where I really admire my father is that he fought it. He kept fighting it. He kept fighting his battles. He kept fighting those things that he struggled with. And he left so much room for us to have honest dialogue between a daughter and a father that really helped us heal those places. And it also allowed me to feel like there is room for me not to be perfect if I do choose to do this.
You know, what would you say to people who might be watching this who have been hurt by the church, have been hurt? They're also PKs, and they're like, yo, my mom or my dad or my family was somebody totally different off stage and they walked away. What would you say to encourage them?
If there's any place for hurt people to come, it would be the church. And so I think that you can't put your faith in people, can't put your faith in the church, can't put your faith in pastors. And that's where I think that piece of having your own personal relationship with the Lord is so necessary. Because if I would have even just put all my faith in my father, I would have walked away a long time ago.
You know, you've been open about struggling with like self-image and feeling alone and, you know, tormenting thoughts or whatever. Like, how have you been able to overcome that?
I think that I have first realized that where God has gifted me is also where the enemy will attack. And so I think when you name it and then when you call it out, I refuse to like deal with that on my own and think that what I've learned is that the more that I talk to people about it, that it's also other people's struggle. And that takes away the loneliness and the isolation part when you realize that other people are having the same struggles. And I think that it is a fight.
It is.
Not everything is healed in a moment. There are some things that you just have to fight. And I love a good fight. I really do. I've learned to love the fight because I know who's fighting with me. And I really do. Every time that I overcome something, I just see more power that the Lord has.
You've also shared that like worship is your safe place. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it really does go back to being a little girl. I remember in that time, my dad was really struggling with addiction, and it was really affecting my parents' marriage a lot. And I remember my dad had come home from being gone for a while, and him and my mom just screaming. And I remember grabbing my little brother and holding him in the corner, and I would sing, I've been through the storm and the rain, but I made it. I've been through sickness, I've been through pain, but I made it. I've had people scandalize my name, but I made it. I thank God that I made it. And at the time, we hadn't made it yet. But I think that is the power of worship, is that, the power of worship is that it is a safe place, but it's also a place where you can prophesy to where you will be. And I look back on that season, and I didn't know what I was singing. I was 5 years old. I didn't have a clue what I was singing. But standing here now, 28 years old, can see that 5-year-old me prophesied to 28-year-old me that me and my little brother would make it. And that's why I say worship is a safe place. You might not be there yet, but you will be. And it wasn't just a prophecy over me and my brother. It was a prophecy over my parents. And that is why I think that worship is such a safe place and such a powerful tool. And that I wish people really knew that, like, it works. It might not work the way that you want it to, but it does work. I can really see that I was singing over myself and over my family, and that the Lord had already started allowing me to worship and allowing me to know the power of worship, and that it is a weapon. It is a weapon. It's a safe place, but it is a weapon, and you can use it. You don't have to be able to sing to use it. You can just start speaking over yourself and things will change. You might not see it for years later, but you will see it. And that's why I say it's a safe place, because my environment in that moment was not safe. But there was a place that I could go, and there was a song that I could sing. And then it ushered in the presence of the Lord. And that was safety for me in that season.
My goodness, I love Lizzie. I just want to quickly mention Not My Will is Lizzie's debut album, and it's available nationwide. Make sure to stream it wherever you like to stream your music. Gordon, I don't know if you could tell, but I really enjoyed talking with her and just getting more of her story. She is a powerhouse. I mean, 28 years old, and the way she sings and the depth of her soul and her spirit. I mean, it's just, it exuded, I feel like, in our conversation.
You brought that depth out, so it was abundant, and,
oh my
and
goodness.
the amount of truth in her,
yeah.
and the wisdom in her.
The
Just
wisdom.
28.
Yes.
It reminded, as it was playing, it reminded me of a time where I'd gone through some real difficulty in the Philippines, and I was supposed to be with DGS Dinakarn in India. I went, despite the difficulty, I went, and the first thing he saw, he knew I was in trouble. He said, "We're going to have a private conversation." He pulled me away from everybody. And, all right, tell me what's going on. And I had in my heart something from my childhood where my parents, the beginning of CBN was very difficult, and you don't see that today. You don't imagine it. It was very difficult on them, and Dad really got a lesson from Exodus. Don't complain as you're going through these struggles. If you're going through the desert, you're on your way to the promised land. Keep the promised land in front of you, and walk with God confidently to that. Don't complain along the way. And so that just got instilled in me. And he was so wonderful. He said, "Gordon, you can pour out your complaint before the Lord." And he pointed to a passage in Psalms where David had done that in song.
Yeah.
And God is able to take that. And the best thing about doing it in that song is that you're doing it in praise, because you know that he can take care of it.
Yeah.
He can comfort you in the middle of your complaint, whatever your difficulty was. I mean, for me, I just thought the world was going to end, kind of stuff. And it was so liberating. And so, I said, well, okay, pray for me now. And then that night in my prayer closet, I poured out my complaint. It was such a liberating moment.
Yes. I mean, yes, lamenting with God is powerful. We see that in the Psalms. We see that throughout the scriptures. And I love what Lizzie said, too. It's like worship is a weapon. You don't have to be able to sing like her in order to experience what worship does for each and every one of us. Worship is a safe place. We can go to the Lord with our complaints. We can lament with him. We can grieve with him. And in worship, we can cry out to him in that praise moment that welcomes in his spirit, his Holy Spirit, the presence of God. And that just shifts things. It really does, no matter what we're going through.
And Lizzie experiencing that as a 5-year-old.
Yes.
So as a 5-year-old, imagine the conflict. How can a 5-year-old deal with all the problems associated with addiction? It's all, I have no idea. I don't know what to do. But she's singing praises that are prophecies over her, over her parents, over her brother. And it's you unleash things. I'll push back on you can't sing like Lizzie. I can sing. Nobody wants to hear it. So that's the difference. People want to hear her. Nobody wants to hear me. But God does.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
I'll make that joyful noise. By the time it gets to him and through the angels, they're going to clean it up. But do it.
Yeah.
Get that praise going, because it is warfare.
Yeah.
And we're all in it. And there is an enemy of our soul that wants to drag us into despair and all of these horrible things. Nothing's going to work out. But when you're in that praise moment, all things are possible.
Amen. Worship is a weapon.
Welcome back to the 700 Club for the CBN News Break. Iran is defying President Trump's threats to take action if the regime doesn't make a deal. The president called Iran the world's biggest sponsor of terror in his State of the Union speech last night and pledged the United States would never let Tehran have a nuclear weapon. Iran's foreign minister called President Trump's remarks, quote, big lies. Another official said if attacked, the U.S. will face, quote, the wrath of Iran. A massive U.S. military force is in the region as the nuclear talks are set to resume tomorrow. Well, college students, teachers, administrators, and parents will take part in the Collegiate Day of Prayer Thursday. It culminates in a night of revival and spiritual awakening as believers around the world unite to seek God, interceding for the needs of the next generation of believers as they pursue their educations and fulfill their callings. The historic night will be hosted from the campus of Liberty University, and you can watch the live stream starting at 8 p.m. Eastern by going to cbnnews.com. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website, cbnnews.com. Gordon and Ashley will be back with more of the 700 Club right after this.
A 3-mile round trip to get water from a muddy pond. Kuliani had to take this journey every day, even though that water was making her son sick, and she was risking the health of her unborn child.
Kuliani lives with her husband and 4-year-old son and is expecting another child in 3 months. Most days, Kuliani and her son spent hours walking 3-mile round trips to get water from a muddy pond. Even though they filtered and boiled it, they still suffered from many health issues.
We often had fevers, stomach pains, skin infection, and itching. My son missed school, and my husband couldn't go to work regularly. During my checkup, the doctor warned me if I didn't drink clean water, it could harm both me and my baby. I was really worried about the health of my unborn child.
Kuliani's husband works as a daily wage laborer. He barely makes enough for food and other basic needs.
My pregnancy forced him to buy water for drinking and cooking. It left us in a very difficult situation.
Then Operation Blessing came to their village with good news. We were building a reverse osmosis water plant at Kuliani's son's school. It gives over 500 students access to clean drinking water, and it's being delivered right to the doorsteps of more than 200 families.
We have plenty of clean water for drinking and cooking. Even the food tastes better. My son is eating well and is happy and healthier now. Since I no longer have to fetch water, I can get a job to help support our family. This water system has truly changed our lives. I sincerely thank Operation Blessing from the bottom of my heart for bringing so much happiness into our family.
You brought happiness into that family, something that we take for granted, that I can go to a tap and I know I'm going to get fresh water. We take that for granted. But in so many communities around the world, they don't have access to it. It's wonderful what happens when we come together to say, well, let's make a difference. Let's provide for their need, whether that's a water system or a hand pump well, whatever that is, let's provide for what they need so that they can have a hope, they can have a future. For so many communities, it's the #1 cause of infant mortality. It means, and usually it falls to women to do this, it means that they don't have the time to do other things like get an education or provide homeschooling for their children. They just don't have the time. There's so much time spent in it. But if we come together and say, yes, let's make a difference, let's be there for them, these things can change, and it's wonderful to see the change and to see the result. If you're not a member of the 700 Club, realize that you can join right now. All you have to do is call us, 1-800-700-7000, say, I want to be a part of that. Every single gift you give, a portion goes into the work of Operation Blessing, and that's water wells, that's free surgeries, that's feeding program, disaster relief, livelihood programs. Another portion goes into the work of CBN International to preach the gospel around the world. Last year we did that in over 70 languages, and it's all made possible because people just like you care enough to give. Now, how much is it to join the 700 Club? It's just $20 a month. You can join at higher levels. If you're already a member, I encourage you to increase. Go to 700 Club Gold at $40 a month. 1000 Club is $1,000 a year. That breaks out to $84 a month. At whatever level you join, I want you to have this, the End Times Unlocked. There's a wonderful workbook that you can study and get the scriptures from the book of Revelation about end times. Then you'll get instant streaming access to a series of talks by the professors of Regent Divinity School. We want to get you the latest theology, the top theologians, to say this is what is coming. These are the signs of the end times. It's the End Times Unlocked. I want you to have it. It's yours when you join. All you have to do is call 1-800-700-7000. Ashley?
All right, well, we've got your email questions, and this is Kathy. She's asking, is there anything wrong with listening to a Bible app read the Word of God instead of reading it for myself? I only have a 9th grade education, and I'm not that good at reading. Will God honor me listening to the Bible? I so want to do what's pleasing to Jesus.
Kathy, that's exactly how the Bible was communicated in the lifetime of Jesus, and you can read that or hear that in the Bible. One of his first sermons in a synagogue in his hometown of Nazareth. And it says, as it was his custom, he was given the scroll, and he opened the scroll, and he read from the book of Isaiah. That's how the Bible was transmitted for over 2,000 years, that the only way you could get it, it was go to the synagogue. They had a very expensive process of copying the Torah, copying the prophets and the Psalms, and they would read from them on Shabbat and on other service days. They would read to the congregation. So you were following that old school method, and that old school method actually works because the Bible is an oral tradition. The letters of the Apostle Paul weren't copied. Printing wasn't invented. They were read to the churches. That was the intent. You're going to have a reader stand up and read these to the congregation. And they were very good at memorizing what they heard. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. So do it. Do it a lot. Listen to the word all the time. Read the word. If you're proficient at reading, read it. But it's wonderful to hear it. It somehow gets into, I guess, a different part of you when you hear it and are able to really incorporate it into your life.
I listen to the Bible app, reading the Bible to me all the time. It's a great way. I think we're so blessed to have that technology today where we can do that. We can listen, we can read, whatever works best for us.
You can have it read to you in Greek and Hebrew, too, if you really want to get
there
crazy.
We go, yeah. All right, well, this is coming from Dee. They're asking, what is a first fruit offering?
Well, it's from Exodus, and again, you're dealing with an agrarian society. Everybody farmed, everybody had an orchard. All of these things were common. So here it is, Exodus 23, the Feast of Harvest. The first fruits of your labor which you have sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you have gathered in the fruit of your labors from the field. So the first fruit is the first part of the harvest, and then there's another tithe at the end of the harvest. That first fruit is saying, I want to dedicate my labor to the Lord. So in our modern times, when you get a specific new thing happening or a new source of income happening, I encourage you to look at that as a fruit, and so offer that first fruit to the Lord, and just see what happens to you. When you honor Him with your tithes and your offerings, that's what offerings is about. It's those extra things that you do above that tithe. If you do it generously, knowing that God will honor His word over you, wonderful things will happen. Here's a word from 1 John. We love Him because He first loved us. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.